Welcome everyone to our Wednesday spotlight. Hi, Michael. Hi,
Hello.
You met Mark. Oh, maybe we even have a first-time participant here, or maybe even two, Carmen and Juliet. Welcome very much. Welcome to you. You are welcome to turn on your camera if you like. Of course, if you're driving or just, it's not possible to turn on the camera, that's totally fine too, to just listen. Other than that, we try to be a really active community here. So your participation and hey, hi, Juliet. Hello. It's really requested here. We really want your participation and being here, and unmute if you have any question, speak your mind. This is what this is all about. I'm Sarah, German English conference interpreter and business guide, and currently in a hotel in Dresden. Maybe later I can show you just a nice, like a room tour or something. I don't know, but maybe it's boring. But but it's a nice hotel, like that the client booked, not me. I would not book it, and we
Sarah,
have a great
Sarah,
spotlight.
may I
Yes.
welcome my Dutch colleague?
Oh, yes.
You met Koning, because you reacted on my invitation for this group, I think.
I see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it, Michael, in the NGTV mail, I think.
Yeah, mail. Yes, that's it.
Oh, great. Well,
very
thanks,
nice.
Michael.
You came to the group.
Bedankt je wel.
This time it is at a time that I can participate because it's we've got right now about 6 hours time difference. So
where are you?
In Chile.
Oh, in Chile.
In Chile.
Oh,
then you're drinking mate. I like this drink as well.
Very good.
It's really cold. We've got snow outside right now.
Oh, you met here in the Netherlands. Here, I live in Maastricht. It's really hot.
Yeah,
30 degrees and more.
Yeah, well, I'm going there in at the end of July.
Okay, good.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah, and I have to tell you, Sarah, I have to leave in 30 minutes because there's also a Tech Forward webinar about SEO. So I don't want to miss it, but we have the replays always, so I can see the rest.
Right.
Sorry, Mark, that I can't follow the whole presentation, but I'm very curious what you have to tell.
I saw it too, but this was the only time Mark and I were available at the same time, because Mark also has a big time difference and it's already nighttime, right? And you have a jet lag and had a 10-hour interpreting assignment. so, but we always have the meeting on a Wednesday. So that's why we make it possible. And, so no matter what, and I took a train as well, but everything went well too. So,
good.
But okay, so I think, bedankt je well, Michael, and you met. Welcome, and Carmen, of course, as well. And so I would say, let's start right away to, be mindful of everybody's time. Mark, the floor is yours.
Okay,
please.
right. Well, I suppose you might describe me as an accidental interpreter, in that I am more or less self-trained, but I came with certain basic advantages which many people will not have had. First of all, I am British on my father's side, was brought up in England, and had, as you can hear, received English beaten into me as a child. This is the way it was when I was young, and that's how I learned to speak. And I was also trained in public speaking at the same time, trained how to write speeches, how to deliver them, and how to speak properly in English, right? But my mother was Italian, and until I was 4 years old, I spoke no English at all, only Italian in the home. So I am, in many ways, a true bilingual. Every year, when I was growing up, we would go off to stay with my grandparents on the beach in Italy, near Genoa, which is where my grandfather actually came from originally. He was a Supreme Court judge in Italy, who had to flee to Switzerland to live with his banker brother, because he refused to hand out political sentences under Mussolini. So when the war broke out, or was pretty certain, what happened is my mother was sent to South America, not to Chile, but to Uruguay and Argentina, to keep well clear of what was happening in Europe. And she only came back once it was clear that Italy was being liberated of fascism. And in fact, as a curious curiosity, I suppose you can say, the resistance fighters who took Mussolini and the last night on his way out of Italy, being smuggled out by the Nazis, were actually brought him back to the family farm, which is halfway up a mountain, where my grandfather would come across from Switzerland to meet my grandmother, right? Because it's very isolated, it's very high up and very much out of the way. And we made sure that the peasant farmer was, let's say, politically on our side. And my mother was there apparently the night that he was taken. But in the middle of the building, there's one building. There was the building where my grandfather was, and my grandmother and my mother. And there was a huge wall going down the middle of the building, and the farm was on the other side. And they heard a lot of shouting, and they thought it was the farmer having a row with his wife, a marital problem. It's only the next morning when they found out that they took him down, they took Mussolini and Clara Petacci down to the village square and found out that the Nazis had bombed just up the lake and killed about 300 people in revenge, that's where he was machine gunned on the spot. And then a whole bunch of other things happened in Como and in Milan to the body and so on and so forth. But then that's where curiously he spent his last night alive. And my mother was an unwitting sort of witness or half witness, because she heard the shouting but didn't know what it was about. The words were indistinct. Anyway, this is all beside the point. My father was a builder and developer in the UK. And as a child, I would walk over building sites and discuss problems of town planning, law, and so on and so forth growing up, because I was intended to go into the family firm, right? But what happened was, for various reasons, my father decided to try and put me into a lawyer's office. And the lawyer thought it was a good idea to give me books on conveyancing, which is the art of transferring property from one hand to another. And I read these books, or started to read them. And I was basically abandoned to my own things in an office on my own, reading this stuff. And I thought, rather than spend the rest of my life doing this, I'd rather commit suicide now. And my parents threw a complete wobbler and said, this man doesn't want to go to university, doesn't want to do law. What are we going to do with him? And they cast around, and more or less by mistake, because I was totally bilingual in Italian and I had studied languages right the way through to A levels. I studied Latin and French and English. But the fact was, my Italian, although I had no qualifications whatsoever, I was totally bilingual. And I managed to get a place without having to sit a preliminary year on the BA course in Manchester University, which is where I ended up doing my degree. And then various things happened. I came out here for a year abroad. And how did I end up learning German? This is another interesting story. There I was doing a year abroad in Milan. It was the years when Italy could not cope with its typical inefficiency with the mail, the quantity of letters being sent through. So they started incinerating tons and tons of mail, right? And I wrote to my then girlfriend, who was studying at Würzburg University in the south of Germany. She was on the floor above studying German, was on the floor below in the same faculty doing Italian, and said, I'm going to come and see you at such and such a time. Obviously, she didn't receive the letter. I get the declared time at Würzburg station. Can I find anybody that speaks English, French, Italian? Nothing. I found a priest. We're talking 1974, 1975, towards the end of the last century, right? And I got a priest with a dog collar, and he gave me directions in Latin, semper dexter procedes. I had the address, and he gave me the address directions in Latin. I thought, that's it. I have to learn German. I cannot get around Europe without German. And that started a whole cycle of nearly 20 years of evening classes, going through the Goethe Institute, all the way through from the bottom in Manchester. And then when I moved to France, I carried on in Paris for years and years. That's basically how things went. I eventually qualified as a chartered surveyor. And in surveying, which is a highly technical profession, right?
What is a charter?
A charter surveyor. It is a unique profession in the UK, which is the highest possible qualification in construction and land management and valuation. It's a cross between, it's the economic side with the legal side, town planning side, and construction, all rolled into one. After my degree, it took me 7 further years to qualify as a chartered surveyor. And the number at the time was limited. They only have so many places available according to the number of people who've died, dead men's shoes. And you're only allowed to sit the exams 3 times. And I failed twice. And this was despite having been brought up and knowing the techniques hand-on, because, you know, I'd seen the building sites. I know how to lay bricks because as a kid, I was shown how to do it by my father's workers, you know. So despite all that, I still failed. But anyway, I finally qualified. And then I started working. I was specialized in commercial real estate, commercial and industrial real estate and investment work as a qualified valuer. And I was working in this sector in the Greater Manchester area for the whole of the northwest of England in a major multinational which became Zadelhoff, which is quite well known in Germany, right? And I was working with them, and eventually I got headhunted to go to Paris to work for CBRE because there are very few surveyors who are qualified and speak foreign languages, extremely few. I was in the European group, and all the European group across the whole of Western Europe, 20 people. But they were the heads of the biggest real estate firms that managed and handled deals that were, for example, personally, my biggest deal was 300 million euros, which is quite a large deal. But I actually went bigger on one that failed when I became victim of a fraud on a joint venture with some American partners. I'd eventually left CBRE and what was to become, Cushman & Wakefield, now called Cushman & Wakefield. I went independent, solo, developing with 2 lawyers, actually. One was from Connecticut and the other was from California, both having worked in multinational companies, both well aware of international real estate, both well qualified. The Connecticut guy was the head of the Connecticut Bar Association, and we set up a Connecticut sub-S corporation. And I found a property near Euro Disney, which was a chateau with enough room for a It was 24-hole golf course, so that you had a practice pitch and 18 holes, championship level, and 300 timeshares. The Marriott Corporation had signed up with a contract for 42 years to operate the facility. We had GTM Entrepôts, which is the 2nd largest construction company in France, to do the building work. All the permits were in place. All that we needed was the construction finance. We found 3 guys from California through our lawyers in Connecticut who were introduced to them and came through with growing references. And they were going to bring Shearson Lehman to do the development finance for this project, which was in the region of just the development finance was around 300 million. And we were putting in 18 million apiece as the seed capital. So 3 of ours, 3 times 18, and 18 million theoretically 3 times on the other side. So that was 100 million. With that, we were going to raise the rest in the market. And we put our money in, and the money was somehow taken out of the bank by the other side. We suspect there was a signature that was forged because it should not have been able to be done without our signature from our side as a JV. And when my partner, the lawyer, found out about it, the Connecticut lawyer found out about it, he went, "They're not going to get away with this," banging his finger on the table. He broke his finger. which gave me an important lesson. You know, you have to be able to step back from major disasters, right? And say to yourself, right, this is not going to kill me because this could make me very ill indeed. And in fact,
yeah. Can we interrupt, or do you want to continue? Or because like I cannot imagine like this is. I can imagine that one becomes suicidal. I don't know, after such a loss, or I don't know if it was it like personal money, or was it like from like the company, but still your personal money, but still
it was personal money.
Oh man, yeah.
It was all of it. It was personal money for all of us, and this was quite a loss. Fortunately, I mean, this was part of a series of developments that I was working on. I was then going to do a major development in Leipzig on the former goods rails yard, which was going to be like La Défense in Paris. It was going to take 30 years to build out. It would have been roughly 1 million square meters of offices, hotels, workspaces, and residential, all built into the same thing, using land where there was no problem about the ownership, which was the problem when the wall first came down, because it was always state railway land. And we were going to do a JV with the state railway to do it. But when I lost the capital, that project folded, as did an investment in 1,000 apartments, which I was going to take on as an investment in the center of Dresden, which also died.
Oh.
And also
so
a
right
conversion.
Here.
Yeah, and I also had a project in the center of Budapest to renovate the former ballet building and turn it into a 5-star hotel for Sheraton.
And
that all died.
This all died.
This was a major disaster. Yeah.
How did you how did you feel? Did you break your thumb as well, or like how did you or get out of it? How did you cope?
Well, the first thing I told myself is, I'm in reasonable health. I'm still reasonably young. I was in my early 30s, right? I made this money. I cannot go back to my profession after a major failing like that. There is no way back to working in international real estate. It's a small village. Everybody knows everybody else. I cannot do that.
Why? Sorry, because you were not the
No,
gangster.
because you see, the situation is in such a rarefied world. You cannot have a failure, a major failure.
Oh, I see.
A major failure you'll never be listened to again. You'll never be able to be a consultant. It destroys your credibility. I was dead, basically, that way. So it's professional death. Fortunately, I had the foresight to set up a subsidiary company, a separate company, which was my lifeboat project. What if everything goes wrong? You know, I had the foresight to think of something. And I had come in as a so-called white knight to fund the acquisition of a very forward-looking environmental engineering company, which was based near Paris. The situation was that the man who had founded this company had 30 years of environmental engineering experience, particularly dealing with the treatment of solid waste, urban waste, which is a highly specialized field. And I was very keen on environmental. I could see the huge future for environmental engineering. And this guy was literally one of the world's top experts. What he'd done is that when he set up his company in the 1950s, he had failed to set it up with limited liability because it was not an option at the time. And when it became an option, he failed to change it to limited liability. What happened was that he did a major number of projects across the whole of the Francophone world, the French-speaking world, you know, in French Africa and so on and so forth. And he did one in the French Dom-Tom, which is the overseas department, for Guadeloupe and Martinique. Major project for about 3 or 4 million euros of feasibility studies for refurbishing their environment issues there. And then the French government, the central government, I'm not sure why, they did something to offend the Dom-Tom people, and they froze all transfers back to mainland France. The problem was he had to pay wages, had about 30 engineers working for him. And he was personally liable. And if I had not been found by the liquidator to step in as a white knight to pay the wages, to save the company and get it back on its feet, he would have lost his house. As it was, I managed to save it, get it working, and we were getting back on to track, But the problem was environmental engineering in France, or working with local authorities in France, is a bit of a nightmare because they've had to pass a special law because local authorities pay late. I mean, it's a commonplace. We complain about late payments in our business, in our profession. I have never yet seen an agency in our profession that pays 60 months late.
60. 60.
60. That's 5 years.
Oh my gosh!
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But what was your subsidy company that you could step in? Did you borrow money or something?
I was fine. It was my money, but I'd already put it in, so I was already there. I was already exposed. It was capital, right? So it meant that we were able to pay the salaries for a certain period.
Okay, so you borrowed basically, you made a deal or something.
Borrowed from me. I was the bank.
Yeah.
Okay,
he borrowed from me. So you lent. Sorry, English.
That's right. Okay, right.
So you lent the money, yes.
Now the situation is that there's a system in France that they had to pass a special law for people who work for local authorities because the average payment time, I say 60 months, that's an extreme. The average is 36 months.
Okay, this is less of an extreme. Okay.
Okay. The problem is, again, you have to be able to bear 3 years of salary for your staff to handle that. So what they did is they set up a special system where companies with local government contracts, and it's still existing in France, have a special system of subsidized loans for companies who work in that sector. So you can get the loan for the cash flow problem at something like 0.5%. So it's affordable. So it's not necessarily going to kill you outright. So we managed to keep going. And what then happened was my partner.
Sorry, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
How did you manage to trust him after this experience before? How did you manage again to?
Well, he made a mistake. Look, he's well known. He was clearly an honest man.
Okay,
I mean, I've been dealing with big deals. You can tell who's honest and who isn't. I wouldn't trust Trump as far as I can throw him, and I'm not that strong, right? Okay.
And
I also happen to know from my US partners exactly how he made his money, which is an absolutely disgusting, immoral tale. He hired contractors who were small companies, did not pay them, let them go to the wall, and he got the building virtually for free.
Oh gosh.
And nobody talks about it because once he'd done it, Euro Disney started doing the same thing with British contractors, and they got almost all of Euro Disney built for free. And it's become standard practice in America.
Oh my gosh.
Less so in Europe.
Mark, may I interrupt you because we now know the whole story of you becoming an interpreter.
Not quite. You only know half of it.
But how when do you why did you become a interpreter? Because you have the languages?
Right. I should explain. There's still the last step to come. The last step is what happened was my partner, took over, and the project, everything was running okay over the last 18 months or so, first getting to the end of 2 years, which is the usual survival threshold of this new business. And he started having some pain in his abdomen. And he went to see, he thought it was, a urological problem, and went to see urologist after urologist after urologist. Nobody could find anything wrong. Until one day he went to see one, and he said, what if this is, pain that's moved on from somewhere else? Next door, I've got a gastroenterologist. Why don't you go and see him, right? And goes to see the gastroenterologist. He rings me up, says, can you please bring me some pajamas to this hospital? They're not letting me out. And they opened him up and they looked. He had stage 5 colon cancer. They gave him 3 months to live. It had already metastasized across his whole body. And in fact, within 3 months, he was dead. And because the company relied so much on his expertise, I had to fold the company. So I lost my lifeboat. So what do? I ring up my former contacts, international lawyers, international construction companies, see who I can, see what I can do in terms of working as a translator, doing technical translations. I have translated so many contracts anyway. I used to do it anyway. Oh, and the other thing is that whilst I was working in real estate in Paris, I was also treasurer for the Institute of Linguists in the UK, for the regional society in France. So I knew people at ESIT and ESIT, that were running interpreter courses and so on. I never went to any because I never imagined for a second I was going to be doing this. I was one of the people in the Institute for Linguists that just happens to use languages as an everyday skill because I needed to communicate with the people in the office, because I needed to be able to talk to people sensibly about the French legal system as compared to the UK legal system, having studied both. And I was very fortunate being coached in the French legal system by the former chairman of the Crédit Lyonnais property arm, which is very useful, And so I was well versed in things like that and all kinds of trickery that gets involved in that, including NBC News, who tried to wriggle out of a lease renewal that they had to do, claiming that they were not protected because they had not registered their company, but they had not registered their company properly, completely not registered their company, and therefore they had no right to renew at all, and therefore they had to pay the full rent. And so they didn't get out of that. Had some clever lawyer that wasn't clever enough. But this is the sort of things that you have to deal with in life, Anyway, this is all beside the point. There I was. What do? I've got to live somehow. And my sister-in-law, who'd spent some years working for a multinational in Austria, suggested that I simply convert as a translator and interpreter. And I did. And I am virtually entirely self-trained, self-taught as an interpreter. I worked for years mainly as a technical translator, doing legal and specifications of all types, 1 to 2 to 6, sand to cement to gravel, this stuff for years and years and years. And then we moved to the south of France because we were living out near Euro Disney where there's nothing. It was a very rural area. To give you an idea, average pass rate for the bac in France is 70%. The local entry rate for the bac in the area where I was it was 70% pass rate for all of France. The local entry rate for the bac, even to city, was 30%.
Sorry, pass rate?
Pass rate is 70% across the whole country, right? Average. What's
pass rate? What is it? I don't
In other words, the number of people who get the baccalaureate at the end of their schooling, right?
Okay.
Right, is they have 70%
pass rate. Sorry,
pass rate.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, 70% pass rate. Okay, yeah. And locally, the sitting rate was 30%. So that is extremely bad local education. Now, it's quite healthy while my child's less than 7 years old. She's living with fields at the back. She can see how the farms work, and it gives you a concrete hands-on thing, a little bit like in Waldorf education. I'm also an anthroposophist, so I've got all this sort of built in, So I thought, well, we'll do what we can, and found an international school in the south of France and got her in there, which is quite good because she passed the entry exam as a bilingual French and English, because her mother was British and she spoke British English at home, learned French, by listening and so on and so forth. So, all straightforward. She learned properly bilingually. And she then carried on with her bilingual education in this quite prestigious school, which is known as the Centre International de Valbonne, CIV. Well known because for the last 20 years, it's never been out of the top 10 schools on results in France. And I became one of the directors of the board for for the school because they needed to convert 10,000 square meters of offices into school classrooms, and I handled that for them free of charge, and I became the treasurer. And how did I end up in Singapore, right? And how did I end up working as an interpreter, right?
Mike, sorry, I have to interrupt you. I have to go. I will listen to the replay. So it's a very interesting story you have.
Right. Okay, right.
I'm so sorry I have to leave.
What
Great.
happened
Thanks,
was...
Michael, for joining.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, right. What then happened was, while we were there, Singapore Economic Development Board send an investigation team round to see how the international education was being run in France. And they come to us and they say to me and to the president of the English section, who was an ex-Paribas main board member and retired, and they say, how about you come and set up a system school in Singapore? So we discussed it to do the same type of school as we had done in France in Singapore. So we discussed it amongst ourselves. We said we have to move, and discussed it in the family and one thing and another. We agreed. He came and I came, and everything was supposed to go through on the tender, and we put all the tender, had local consultants on the local regulations and how they were different from what we'd worked with before, and went through the whole thing of preparing a whole tender, so on and so forth. I used to analyze tenders when I was doing environmental consulting, so I know how it worked the other way around. Yeah. Anyway, so I've been through all of that, went through the system, and we submitted our tender. And once we'd moved, 6 months later, they turn around and say, we have decided to hand it over to a local school instead. So here we are.
Isn't that a risk? Like, you moved before you had the deal, no? Or
we couldn't move. We couldn't get the deal if we didn't move.
Ah, okay, damn it.
It was a precondition.
Yeah, okay.
So, how do you do it? We did it.
Yeah.
We're here. So we discuss and we break up the partnership. He goes to do development in the south of France. And I cast around, what am I doing? What can I do? And I got hired by an interpreting guy based in Kuala Lumpur, who was working a lot with French. And he's a Spaniard, and Alberto Martinez. And he basically said, seeing the way I spoke French, he said, I'm sure you could do SIM. So I said, well, I'll give it a try. And he dropped me into a booth with somebody who was French national, and they discovered that I could do it. And I basically learned on the job how to do it. And then after about 3 or 4 years, I thought that
did you talk to your EC friends about it from the school in Paris?
No, what I did was, no, because I was already doing it. I didn't have chance to, and I was also, I was in France, France to Singapore is ridiculous. I couldn't go back. I couldn't work there and stuff. The advantage that you have here in European languages is there are very few people that can do, European translation, for example, in German, in Singapore, there is me. There is an arbitrator who is German, who does interpreting from time to time if he's interested in the thing, But if it doesn't interest him, he won't do it. And I'm trying to put together a 4-person booth at the moment for a job in Kuala Lumpur quite soon. And I'm short, I'm trying to casting around. Maybe we should speak about this later, Sarah. Anyway, there's nobody else. There's nobody else in Southeast Asia. There was a guy called Dieter Hort in Bangkok, but I think he died. He had a kind of a heart attack. He was, he's gone. He doesn't answer any communications for several years, so he's dead contact. And I had to basically train, so I went to Cambridge Conference Interpreters course and went through that with Julia Poga and Chris Guichaud-Fortis, and discovered that there are techniques that I had no idea about, because I got used to summarizing speeches. It's what I had to do anyway. I had to do consec, but I'd always done consec, never with symbols, on memory, you know, done on memory.
That's why I was asking whether you talked to your friends from ESIT or so and what they said to it. Yeah.
Well, the curious thing is that after a number of years living out here and working as an interpreter and so on and so forth out here in Singapore, in 2017, I came to renew my employment pass, right? I'd been living here for more than 10 years and it worked quite nicely. And, you know, I'd traveled all over Southeast Asia one way or another. And they basically look after you very nicely here if you're an interpreter in Southeast Asia. And for Singapore, you get higher rates than you do in Europe, which is well worth knowing. Anyway, beside the point, the thing is, I got called into the employment to renew my employment pass, and I thought it would go through on the knob because I'd had this company and it kept, you know, I'd filed my accounts and everything, no problem. And they say, you've been here 10 years. And I said, yes, in fact, it's 12. And they say, you like it here? Yes, I love it. And, well, we have had a change of policy because, as you know, we're surrounded by millionaires from all over Southeast Asia who are looking somewhere to live, and they'd rather live here than be in the country that they're in, like Indonesia or Malaysia or Thailand and so on. They all want to come and live here. And we haven't got enough space. So we've had a change of policy. We're going to give you a week to leave. And I said, hold on. By this time, I had met and worked with President, Prime Minister, half of the cabinet, the Minister of Foreign Affairs many times, the Financial Affairs Ministry, and so on and so forth. I met half of them. They say, you're going to give me a week to leave? Are you sure? And they said, we'll call you back. And sure enough, 48 hours later, they said, look, because it's you, and just once, and it's only for you, personal, once and only, you cannot do this more than once. You've got 3 months, but you must leave. So I had to leave. And I moved to Kuala Lumpur for a period of 2 years.
With your family?
My wife, my late wife, had died at that point, and I just recently remarried with a girl from Myanmar, which is a whole different ballgame because there we're talking about 70 years of civil war, stuff we cannot imagine. But then it's a different story altogether.
Yeah, okay, for another spotlight.
Another spotlight, yeah.
It's like the cat with 7 or 9 lives. Or
yeah. Anyway, so here I am. You know, I get thrown out, so I go to Kuala Lumpur because I thought I needed a big airport, which I do in a certain way. But I cannot stand living there. I like Penang. Penang is nice, but it's miles away from anywhere. I can't work as an interpreter. I can't. There are no events in Penang. It's too much of a backwater, and it's too long to get to anywhere. To get to Kuala Lumpur airport takes 5 hours. You know, it's not feasible. It's not feasible. So what do? I moved back down to, I have an apartment now in Johor Bahru, which is just the other side of the bridges from Singapore. It's 8 kilometers away from Singapore. But I cannot stay there when I'm working in Singapore. Why can I not stay? Because I'm working, because, and this is something I have as a confidence from one of the ministers in Singapore. This is a town planning issue in a way. The Sultan of Johor is extremely rich and is now the king of Malaysia. They have a rotating system. They have a number of years being king, the sultans in rotation. He is the man with all the oil in Malaysia. The guy that all the money from Petronas. He is rich beyond the dreams of avarice. However, he wanted to get more money. This is often the case, you know. People seem to want more than they can possibly have, you know. So he decided to create, because Singapore has the world's most expensive real estate per square meter in the world, and I could not buy, because if you buy as a foreigner here, you have 25% stamp duty on anything you purchase, and you cannot spend less than $1 million, and I don't have $1 million. Simple. So the buying is out of the question. I cannot even if I had the $1 million, I wouldn't want to lose 250,000 of them just because to pay the tax, you know? It's crazy. So it's a disincentive. So I went to the other side and I rent an apartment there, which contains all the furniture and stuff that I used to have. And I'm going there tomorrow, having finished work today, to try and see if I can bring back one of my computers there to Italy, where I now have another place. Basically, why am I in Trieste? When I was a student studying Italian, I fell in with a lot of friends from the Trieste area who were studying in Milan at the time. And they've remained friends for more than 40 years. So since my family's all dead, where am I going to go? Where your friends are, logical. And that's, you know, how come I ended up there.
Today, but you're still based in Singapore now, or you still have a connection to Singapore?
I go back and forth.
That way.
I go back and forth.
All right. I see.
Pre-COVID.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
Pre-COVID, I was doing it twice a month, which was killer, because you got jet lag one way and you got jet lag the other way, and then you got jet lag the other way again, and it comes back. You're constantly with jet lag. But at the end of 2019, I was diagnosed myself with stage 3 cancer. And in the hospital in Trieste, they wanted to basically cut me up and throw away all of my innards and leave me with 3 bags for the rest of my life, permanently disabled. And amongst my friends are some very famous surgeons. And they said, no, this does not make sense. Let's get you a second opinion. And they rang up one of the major hospitals in Rome and they put me into the heart transplant unit and did very small keyhole surgery for me. And they did a beautiful job and took out the first tumor with no problem. And the second one was done also by minimally invasive surgery, no problems. The problem then happened because COVID hit, and I was literally in the same hospital as the first COVID patients. They were on the floor below and I was on the floor above in a brand new isolation
you got in your
hospital.
pocket.
I don't know.
Hi, Judy, by the way, great that you joined. And also Eslam and the others.
So I lived through all of this. And then I'm supposed to be left for 3 months with 1 bag instead of 3 bags for the rest of my life. But because of COVID, all the doctors are dying like flies, and I can't reach my oncologist, and I have a bad reaction to the chemotherapy. And it turns out that there was a sentence missing when they translated the protocol from English into Italian. And that sentence meant that I effectively ended up with an overdose of the chemotherapy, which meant that I almost died. My mouth was a complete ulcer. Both feet were complete blisters. I could hardly walk. I was taken away to hospital in an ambulance. And I then spent 50 days in the kidney unit, right? With no food, no drink, on a drip, while they washed out my system of all the poison. There was no way anybody was going to vaccinate me.
This happens to a translator,
it happens to. I was not going to do anything about it.
Example of all, like an interpreter can start a war or whatever if they translate.
Yeah, I know this is a translator that could kill thousands.
Yes.
I know. I have translated. If you've done translation, do you know how easy it is to skip out a sentence? You know, it's easy. It's easily done. So, I'm not going to complain to the guy. I know I'm human. I could probably sue them, but what the hell's the point? I'm alive, The problem was I was getting a swab test morning and night, entirely on my own in a six-bed room, only get to see swab test morning, night, and then change the bottles. That's it. No other human contact. 6 weeks. And I can't be vaccinated.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh.
And then they do the surgery to get rid of the bag, finally. But the surgeon that did it is somebody that came back from retirement and did not know about self-dissolving sutures. So he stitched me up and they all dissolved. So the stitch up didn't work. So I'm now carrying around an artificial hernia for the last 5 years.
Oh no. Oh.
And I'm waiting on surgery for that. And they keep giving me an appointment and they say, no, they can't. And they're going to do it again and then change. And then the hospital that they were going to do it in doesn't have an emergency, cover if there's anything goes wrong. So I'm just waiting.
Yeah. Well,
That's
just maybe
life.
just to get everybody else on board as well, that joined late. So Mark is our spotlight speaker, as you might have guessed by now. And he's telling a story how he became an interpreter, self-trained, after a lot of stories
all
happening in
kinds of
his
things,
life. And
it's been a very rich and different life.
Yeah, absolutely. Very
Altogether,
interesting. Maybe maybe just to summarize in the summary. So you are now based in Trieste as a freelance interpreter, but you still
time
commute to Singapore.
to Singapore.
Kind of.
That's right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I see.
Singapore,
Okay.
the traffic jams that stop you getting by transport across either private or public transport are deliberately engineered. They start at 4 in the morning, go through till 10 in the morning, and in the evening they start at 3 in the afternoon and go through 10 at night. So it's not doable. I have to stay, this side of the border if I've got work here.
Understood. And also everybody else, of course, if you have any questions or comments, you know the drill. You can just unmute and turn on your camera if you like, but don't have to either.
Yeah.
Just Mark,
but Singapore is very interesting in terms of rates, very, very profitable.
And I have a question also, when we can come to this as well. But first, I have like an entrepreneurial question. So in your former life, you seem to have been, or maybe you still are, I don't know, a millionaire, or have been a millionaire, or have made a million, or whatever, like with the 18 million story or whatever. Maybe, and this is always like, and I've learned one should always ask, like, so you belong to like the successful people, the rich, or used to, or I don't know. So how did you make it? Yeah, exactly. You've been there, and you know all of these other people that are immensely rich. What is the secret? How do you make it? How do you become?
Well, it's getting in on the
successful?
ground floor on certain investment deals. When they're setting up the public company, you know what they're doing, you know what the project is, you've done the valuations, you know what it is, and you get a chance to come in at the early stage and before it goes public, and that's how you do it. And that's how I made the money.
Yeah, congratulations, really impressive. Yeah, and this context also, like that you speak to others that are there, but also some evil guys as well, apparently.
But I mean, the problem is that you get all sorts. There are some people in real estate who are scrupulously honest, and you can put your hand on your heart, no problems, you know that everything's going to be fine. There are other people I would only trust as far as I can throw them. And there are other people who are very, very clever, and there are mostly, however, in most cases, the dishonest people tend to be less intelligent, because usually dishonesty is something that people resort to when they haven't got the competence. On one or two occasions, and it's only one or two occasions in a lifetime, you come across people who are clever, competent, and dishonest. And they are very, very frightening. And those people I give a wide berth. We have this saying, or in international real estate, it used to be, be careful when you shake hands with that man, you've got to count your fingers afterwards, It says it all,
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
And there are other sayings, for example, from the real estate world. A joint venture is when you have two companies that come together. One has experience and the other has money. And at the end of the joint venture, you still have a situation where one company has experience and one company has the money, but usually it's the other way around.
Yeah, so you must not lose humor, I see, and you certainly haven't with all of your experiences.
It's a survival technique.
Yeah.
It's very important. If you cannot laugh, you might as well cry,
Yeah.
And there is no point in going depressive. because you give up and there's no point. I mean, you know, why? There is no point. There is always good things. You know, the sun still comes up, birds still sing, you know?
That's right.
And, you know, and the pleasures in life, actually, the best things in life are friends, good people, you know, and that's what I love. I love this job of being an interpreter because I learn so much. And I love learning. I learn so much. I mean, I'm an expert in the field. I've just done 4 days for the C40 cities on flood prevention, which is an area that I was actually quite competent on 20 years ago. And it's very interesting for me to see how what was the sharp end, the cutting edge of techniques has now been developed further. And the cutting edge now is further down the road than I could have imagined it would have gone, facing up to issues that I would never imagined would have arisen. But I know there are other issues which I have identified were coming in the pipeline that have not been raised yet. And I've been trying to speak to some of my ex-colleagues, as it were, you know, trying to put them wise about, you know, potential risks, but there are technical challenges that nobody's found an answer to. I'll just give you a quick example. Dams, hydroelectric dams. It's something that, you know, they exist all over the Alps and any alpine country, probably in South America too, where you've got the Andes, you know, it gets you electricity. Problem is, in the Alps, you have rainfall and that's what fills the dams coming down, but they also bring silt, which is rocks and dirt, and they clog them up. Or if they don't clog them up, they build up at the bottom of the dam, and it builds up, and the capacity of the dam becomes less and less and less and less. And dams are built normally with a 50-year maximum term, right? Normally it's around 20 to 30. How do you take the silt out? Nobody has thought of it yet, because you could use things that you use for marine dredging, you know, floating boats with cranes, right? But you can't get the boat up the mountain. You can't use portable, you know, truck-based stuff because you can't get the trucks up the mountain. So how, you know, this is a technical one. No one I know of has an answer to, but that's going to be a major technical question. And if you know somebody that's thought of an answer, please let me know. I want to invest.
Yeah, not bad. Okay, one of those big problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This is a big problem that's coming that nobody's even looking at.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very interesting. And maybe also like to wrap up with coming back to the loop with the interpreting. So you mentioned just now that Singapore is also a good place for interpreting.
Yeah, prices are good.
Yeah,
let me give you an idea. IEC rates here, IEC convention is 1,200 Sing dollars a day, which is around, it's getting up for 800, 900 euros a day. Standard for any European language.
But now if somebody
oddly
like
enough,
who is
Korean
in
and
Europe,
Japanese, they get more, and German gets more, and Swedish gets more, but there's not much demand. That's the problem. There's very little demand.
Oh, yeah. So, but the demand is also like, it's like a European language, also English and another European language, or
well, let me put it this way: the majority
yeah.
of the demand here in Asia is obviously for Chinese, and there is demand obviously for Thai, Bahasa, which comes in two flavors: the Malaysian or Indonesian. They can understand each other. I gather it's closer, say, that it is between Spanish and Italian, between Bahasa Malaysia and Bahasa in Indonesia. But they can speak to each other. Everybody agrees Bahasa Malaysia is much more crude, but it's based on English and much more English influence in it. So they borrow words like, but to give you simple examples, center, S-E-N-T-A, you know, meaning center, C-E-N-T-R-E, or other ones, all kinds of things.
And what would you like? And somebody based in Europe, could they now do client acquisition remotely in Singapore, or not
it's
such a good
difficult.
idea.
That's not such a good idea because you don't have the context. There are a few agencies out here, but there are also rogue agencies out here. There's one agency in particular. There have been a lot of cases of stolen CVs, which was a big problem a number of years ago, where people's CVs would get stolen. We would never even be contacted, you know, and this CV would be handed round. They would hire students on a gap year, dump them in the booth just because they can speak then the mother tongue of the questioning. Nobody knew that they couldn't do the job of interpreting, and they just simply get paid, and then they're paying these people less than the official minimum wage in the country in question. This, to me, is utterly scandalous, and those guys have been blacklisted, as you can well imagine, anybody that was involved in that. But there have been other scams apart from that. I mean, the company that was practicing that, or one of the companies doing that, has also been doing things like hiring people from outside Singapore, flying them in, getting them to cart round, you know, tour guide systems and so on, and then simply not paying when the time is due. Because there used to be a regulation which changed last year that if it's less than 10,000 Singapore dollars, you cannot get a lawyer to represent you. You have to represent yourself in court. And that means you have to fly out here again, you know, and bear that extra cost. And you couldn't get, and then they introduced Zoom style court proceedings. But then again, they disallowed my costs when they did, because now they've got the Zoom style, they won't pay anybody costs anymore. But they have to have, this is the weird thing, they have something known in legal circles as ratio diaboli, in other words, the devil's reasoning, right? Which is, and this is used in Singapore law, you have to be able to produce some document from a lawyer or from a court in the country where you are that says that that country will not accept proceedings that are in digital form. Now, the problem is you can find all kinds of rulings that will say you can do this, you can't, but that you can't, to find that there is nothing in the law that says you can't, you know, is virtually impossible. It's the way it's been turned makes it impossible to prove. And I've been trying to argue with the Academy of Law for this, and I'll carry on about it because it's become a bit of a
really unfair again. And this is the law. This is unbelievable.
This is the law. It's a crazy situation. But you know.
Well, it's crazy also that the hour is already over. I have like 1 minute left. I want to be mindful. Also, Mark, you have had a 14-hour day or something, and you need to sleep.
Yeah, I've had 14-hour day, but that's where jet lag comes in handy because you can handle it.
Yeah. But is there any last burning question by anybody else here? Any of our members? Any last question or comment? Maybe just also Carmen, Gilmet, and Mohamed, for the new members, welcome again. And just to let you know that you are also totally welcome to be a spotlight speaker. Let me just invite them as a spotlight speaker. Anybody can be a spotlight speaker, like Mark, you know, tell your story, or if you have a topic to talk about, you know, you're totally welcome. And we put you in the spotlight. It doesn't have to be as long as Mark. Mark is a natural speaker. We learned this today. We can make it shorter as well, no problem. So just to let you know.
I might do it, but it requires some time to put the whole story together.
Oh, nice, Judy. Yes, let's be in touch.
Great, fine. What I was going to say is the one thing is that where I get my work is I work in fields where I have hands-on experience. And that gives me a great advantage because I don't need to do much prep. I know the terminology before I start.
Because your background, it's also understandable.
My background, I actually know what the words mean or what they're doing. I think Gilmet also wanted to
say something. Gilmet,
sure,
please.
Please.
Just saying that I enjoyed your story very much. And I can also present myself one day and talk a little bit about my story.
Amazing.
So
we note it down here.
Really happy to join this group. Very interesting.
I mean,
great.
The thing about experience is it's something that you can put, you know, you can make it available to other people. so that the lessons, that if you have learned any lessons, that's the main thing. Do you learn the lessons? You know, if you can learn lessons, you can help other people to learn lessons. Learn from you, from my mistakes, you know, because I've made some big ones, you know.
But you get out of it, so chapeau, you know, really, this
Get out of it relatively, you know.
takes a lot, you know,
still here,
out of,
you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, chapeau for that. And with that, I think this is a great, you know, ending, wrap up for our meeting today. Nothing burning, nobody anymore. If you have a last question, of course, I don't want to just, you know, cut it off or anything. No? Okay, cool. I think, Mark, we all have to digest it. All of your stories, like, whoa, like, and that you got out of all of this. This is so amazing. So I wish you all the best for your health now,
Thank
that
you.
everything gets resolved and everything.
It's an annoyance. That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
an annoyance, you know.
Yeah, but keep up your good attitude, outlook to life, and yeah, be in touch in the Terps Practice Network, of course.
Okay.
And see you again next week.
Okay, right.
So have a
Thank you.
great rest of your day,
All the best.
everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.